Lifecycle of an entity bean instance in Jakarta Enterprise Bean, so EJB. Here you can see the lifecycle of an entity bean instance. An entity bean instance is in one of the following three states. It does not exist. Pooled state. An instance in the pooled state is not associated with any particular entity bean identity. Ready state. An instance in the ready state is assigned an entity object identity. The following steps describe the lifecycle of an entity bean instance. An entity bean instance life starts when the container creates the instance using new instance. The container then invokes the set entity context method to pass the instance a reference to the entity context interface. And the entity context interface allows the instance to invoke services provided by the container and to obtain the information about the caller of a client invoke method. And the instance enters the pool of available instances. Each entity bean has its own pool. While the instance is in the available pool, the instance is not associated with any particular entity object identity. All instances in the pool are considered equivalent, and therefore any instance can be assigned by the container to any entity object identity at the transition to the ready state. While the instance is in the pooled state, the container may use the instance to execute any of the entity beans finder method shown as EJB find method in the diagram here, or any of the entity beans home method shown in the EJB home method in the diagram here. The instance does not move to the ready state during the execution of the finder or home method. An EJB select method may be called by an entity beans home method while the instance is in the pooled state, and the instance transitions from pooled state to the ready state when the container select that instance to service a client call to an entity object or an EJB timeout method. There are two possible transitions from the pool to the ready state through EJB create method and EJB post create methods, or through the EJB activate method. The container invokes the EJB create method and EJB post create methods when the instance is assigned to an entity object during the entity bean entity object creation. That is, when the client invokes a create method on entity bean's home object. The container invokes the EJB activate method on an instance when the instance need to be activated to the service an invocation on the existing entity object. This occurs because there is no suitable instance in the ready state to service the client call or the EJB timeout method. When an entity bean instance is in the ready state, the instance is associated with the specific entity object identity. While the instance is in the ready state, the container can synchronize the state of the instances with the state of entity in the underlying data source whenever it determines the need to in the process invoking the EJB load, EJB store methods 0 or more times. The business method can be invoked on the instance 0 or more times. Or EJB timeout method can be invoked on the instance 0 more times. Invocation to the EJB load and EJB store methods can be arbitrarily mixed with the invocations of business methods and EJB timeout methods invocations. The EJB select method can be called by a business method, or EJB load, or EJB store method, or EJB timeout method while the instance is in the ready state. The container can choose to passivate an entity bean instance within the transaction. To passivate an instance, the container first invokes the EJB store method to allow the instance to prepare itself for the synchronization of the database state with the instance's state, and then the container invokes the EJB passivate method to return the instance to the pooled state. Eventually, the container will transition to the instance to the pool state. There are three possible transitions from the ready to the pooled state. Through EJB passivate method, through EJB removed method, and because of the transaction rollback for EJB create, EJB post create, or EJB remove. It's not shown in the life cycle of the entity bean instance here. The container invokes the EJB passivate method when the container wants to disassociate the instance from the entity object identity without removing the object. The container invokes the EJB remove method when the container is removing the entity object, that is when the client invoke remove method on the entity object's component interface, or remove methods on the entity bean's home interface. If EJB create, EJB post create, or EJB remove is called, and the transaction rollback, the container will transition the bean instance to the pool state here. When the instance is put back to the pool, it is no longer associated with any entity object identity. The container can assign the instance to any entity object within the same entity bean home. The container can remove the instance in the pool by calling unset entity context method on the instance. Notes the entity context interface passed by the container to the instance in the set entity context method is an interface, not a class that contains specific static information. For example, the result of the entity context.get primary key method might be different each time an instance moved from the pooled state to ready state. And the result of the get caller principle and isCaller in role method may be different from each business method. Step 2, a runtime exception thrown from any method of an entity bean class, including business methods, and callback invoked by the container results in the transaction to the does not exist state. The container must not invoke any method on the instance after runtime exception has been caught. From the caller's perspective, the corresponding entity object continues to exist. The client can continue accessing the entity object through its component interface because the container can use the different entity bean instance to delegate client's requests. 3. The container is not required to maintain a pool of instances in the pool state. The pooling approach is an example of a possible implementation, but it is not required implementation. Whether the container uses a pool or not has no bearing on the entity bean's coding style. Here you can see does not exist interact with pooled, does not exist, and here you can see instance throws a system exception from any method. Is connected to does not exist here. Does not exist is connected to pooled through via new instance, and set entity context easy too. Pool is connected to itself through via home EJB home method args, and pool is connected to itself via EJB find method args, EJB select method args. Here pooled interacts with ready. Pooled is connected to ready via EJB create method args and EJB post create method args. Pooled is connected to EJB via EJB activate. Here ready is connected to itself via EJB load, and ready is connected to itself via business method. Ready is connected to itself via EJB timeout args. Ready is connected to itself via EJB select, and ready is connected to itself via EJB store, and ready is connected to pooled via EJB passivate method here, and ready is connected to pool via here EJB remove method. And pooled is connected to does not exist via one here unset entity context method. Now this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for watching it.